What is Blake Lively talking about? I watched that 10-minute dancing video and here's what I saw. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Melissa. I'm a trauma and narcissistic abuse recovery specialist. And as I've listened to the comments and the discussion around the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni conflict, there are just so many places that I think people are getting it wrong. And I have to say that what originally prompted my interest in this conflict was hearing Blake Lively discuss the symptoms that she felt afterwards, things like physical symptoms or trouble sleeping or wanting to stay in bed all day or being sad or tearful or having difficulty engaging with her kids. And it really struck me to my core. One, because I'm also a mother of 5. I've also experienced relationship abuse in personal relationships and professional relationships. I understand how hard that can be. And 2, because this is what I do right now. This is my area of focus, is helping people alleviate those trauma-based symptoms as quickly as possible. So it really caught my attention to see kind of what was going on. And as you know, she started out with a complaint last month, followed by a lawsuit alleging sexual harassment on the set of It Ends With Us, followed by retaliation in the form of a smear campaign. Now, lots of people have jumped in on the bandwagon of weighing in on this and having their own experiences with her, how she was in previous interviews, whether or not she farted on sets of previous projects, whether or not he's a nice guy, weighing in on all kinds of things that are essentially completely irrelevant. They are completely red herrings because the topic at hand here is sexual harassment. Anything else related to any of those other things is entirely irrelevant, because whether or not Blake Lively is a nice person, whether she's completely unlikable, whether she's a total bitch, she has no right to be sexually harassed, right? That's just a given. So all of the weighing in about, personality and whatever is entirely irrelevant. It's just designed to distract you from the truth of the matter. So let's talk about sexual harassment. And I think that this is a concept that is grossly misunderstood. And I find it's so important, or feel so compelled to share about this, because those in my community, those who follow my articles, who've watched my videos, who've participated in my programs, have experienced relationship abuse. If they're my age, they've most likely experienced sexual harassment numerous times. And people are still confused about what it is, right? So sexual harassment falls under 3 different categories, typically: gender harassment, sexual attention, and sexual coercion. Now, from what I've seen, and I have not read all of the legal filings and whatnot, but from what I've seen, Blake Lively's complaints all fall under the sexual attention category. These are unwelcome sexual comments, unwelcome comments about one's appearance or body parts, unwelcome comments about people's private body parts, unwelcome showing of videos or things of a sexually graphic nature. The key here is that they are unwelcome. And the determination of unwelcome needs to be made each and every time. Very similar to the idea of consent. Consent is not given once for the rest of your life, right? Like, just because you consented your old high school boyfriend or girlfriend kiss you doesn't mean that they just have carte blanche to come kiss you whenever they want now, right? That does not mean that consent is forever standing. It should be obvious, but for some reason it is not. So whether or not they had, playful banter in texts or good rapport early on in the project, doesn't in any way change whether or not consent was granted later in the project. Consent regarding the types of conversations, the types of texts. And it is on the person who is experiencing those as unwelcome. It is on them to speak up and to say, this is unwanted. This is unwelcome. This needs to stop. And I'll make another video talking about that later. Today, I really do want to focus on this dance scene. So out of the numerous complaints of sexual harassment that led to a toxic or hostile work environment, one of which was the filming of this dance scene, which, as you know, Justin Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, released last week, thinking that it vindicated him, that it proved that there was no sexual harassment. Now, first off, I have to say, I don't know how a 10-minute video could dismiss all of her sexual harassment claim, because at best, it could prove that there was no sexual harassment in that 10 minutes. This was a project that spanned months into years. A 10-minute video can't prove whether or not there was sexual harassment at any other point of time in this project, right? At best, it can prove that there wasn't sexual harassment in that 10 minutes. And having watched this video and having, reviewed the documents around it, I entirely understand why Blake Lively's team feels that this video entirely proves her point, that there was sexual harassment. The scene was written without any kissing, any, kissing down her neck, any caressing. The scene was written as slow dancing while talking. And if you watch this video and you see that, the first couple times Justin Baldoni leans in and tries to kiss her, she pulls away. She says, I think we should just be talking and dancing. That's romantic. She addresses the behavior. So she did not consent to being kissed in the filming of that scene. It was not in the script. It was not an approved part of the script. It was entirely improvised. She made it clear that she did not consent when she pulled away and when she said, I think we should just be talking and dancing. That's more romantic. And despite saying that the first time, saying it again the second time, he went on to try to kiss her 3 more times. Now, if you watch her body language during this video, she's got her right hand on his chest so she can kind of hold him back or hold him off. He leans in to try to kiss her again, and she spins to get out of the way. You can see that she's visibly uncomfortable. And people will say they were talking, they were joking around. This just looks like, it was completely professional and on the up and up. And I would say, in a scene that was not to have any physical contact, that didn't have an intimacy coordinator present, if you were at work and your boss, he was her boss, he was the director in this film, if your boss started kissing your neck or trying to kiss you, would that be professional and appropriate? No. Would that be sexual harassment? Of course it would. Now, at the very least, as the director, if his vision for this scene was different than what was in the script, that would have been something to discuss ahead of time to gain her consent for being kissed in that moment. Just because she gave consent to be kissed in other scenes does not mean that she gives consent carte blanche to be kissed in every scene, right? This should be obvious, but for some reason it is not. And the thing that disturbs me about that most is, regardless of how things settle out in the legal dispute between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, we have a world full of people who are confused about consent and sexual harassment, and whether or not they're in the right when they say no and someone still pushes, and who justifies someone else's bad behavior by saying that the other person, isn't very nice or isn't very likable, or, oh yeah, well, she wanted to wear $5,000 shoes and it didn't fit the character. Like, what does that have to do with anything? That has absolutely nothing to do with anything. So for each and every person watching, I want you to really understand the concept of consent, the concept of sexual harassment in your own life. I want you to notice, go back and watch that video. Notice how uncomfortable she looked. And yes, she was continuing to make small talk and whatnot. She was getting through the situation just like women and men before her have done for decades. I think back to the first time that I was sexually harassed in the workplace. I was 17, and I was riding with my boss to go see a client in the middle of nowhere, out in the country somewhere. This is like pre-cell phone days. And he asked me to come sit on his lap while he was driving. And I was like, no, that's not going to happen. But there was a general concern about being lighthearted enough about it or joking enough about it that he didn't just pull over and let me out in the middle of the country, in the middle of nowhere, where I had no idea where I was, no way to get anywhere, no cell phone. Like I said, those didn't even exist. There definitely was an element of wanting to keep the peace, of wanting to keep things moving. And I have no doubt that in a situation like this, the desire to keep the peace, to keep the scene rolling, to just get through it and get done with it as quickly as possible would play a role. I'm really interested in your thoughts about this. I'm interested to see where people are getting hung up, or maybe you completely agree. Maybe for those of you who've watched videos on my channel who understand narcissistic abuse, relationship abuse, maybe you totally see it clearly. Maybe that's just not what's being publicized. But I think it's really important that we take a step back and not just listen to the loud voices, or not just take part in this, wanting to knock down the tall poppy with other complaints or accusations or things that are irrelevant. The complaint was sexual harassment. The video, in my mind, supports the complaint of sexual harassment in that 10-minute period. It doesn't say anything about what's happened elsewhere. That's obviously for the judge or the jury to decide. But to dismiss it outright without really understanding the concept of consent or what sexual harassment is, or by dismissing it by thinking, well, she's not a very nice person, so she deserved it, or it's not that big of a deal. If you're one of the people sitting there saying it's not that big of a deal, I want you to take a long, hard look at your past and see how many times someone has harassed, violated, abused, anything in that way to you, and you've said it's not really that big of a deal. Because I guarantee you, if you're reacting negatively to this, your soul disagrees. And it's going to be really important to wake up and listen. I'm going to be back maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, talking more about this, because I think there are a lot of learning opportunities in this conflict. And I don't know either of them. I don't have a horse in this race, but I think there are wonderful opportunities to discuss concepts uh, that lead to relationship abuse that are commonly misunderstood. If you want to be a part of that discussion, make sure you give me a follow, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next time that I go live. And if you want to know more about healing your own relationship trauma, check out a link in the chat. I recorded a free masterclass earlier this month. Uh, it's going to tell you everything that you need to know about healing relationship trauma.